Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, January 5, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll go ahead and get started tonight by reading our roll, please.
Councilmember Starr.
Here.
Brecky. Here. Erickson. Jensen.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Neitzert.
Here.
Selberg.
Here.
Sale.
Here. All right, we welcome back Reverend Brett Best with Emmanuel Baptist Church to give our invocation tonight. Reverend Best, thanks for being here again. We'd ask that you rise for that and then stay standing for our Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Let us pray. Our God, our Heavenly Father, we're here tonight to do the business of our community, and that business is coming together. It's working with one another. It's encouraging and strengthening one another. And I pray for the individuals who have been elected to these spots to serve our community, to lead us going forward into this new year, that you will grant them wisdom, and that you will grant us wisdom to follow that lead, to work closely with them and with one another, to establish the very best, most just, and equitable community we can possibly be. Let Sioux Falls be a light to the rest of our nation. We ask this in Jesus' name. Let those who agree say, Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd ask that the counselors on the phone, if you could mute your lines unless you're planning to speak, that would be great. And we'll move on to our agenda, starting with item 4, which is our consent agenda. Look for any changes to that or a motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Starr?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to pull items number 30 and their sub-items 30 and 34 from the memo.
Okay. Items 30 and 34, sub-items pulled from the memo. We will do that. Any other changes, council?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Starr and seconded by Sale to approve this. Any discussion there? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr.
Yes.
Brecky. Yes. Erickson. Yes. Jensen.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Neitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that item passes 8-0. We'll move on to our next item, which would be our regular agenda approval. Look for a motion on that.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Erickson, seconded by Jensen. Any discussion there? All right, we'll take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr.
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Neitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Before we continue on with our regular agenda, I'd like to review public input for our agenda items coming up. For regular agenda items, comments are limited to 3 minutes unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input is limited to 5 minutes. For all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item under consideration only. During general public input portion of the meeting, at the end, we will have comments that will last no more than 3 minutes per person, and comments are limited to those topics which did not involve agenda items appearing earlier in the agenda, as comments will have already been received into record for those items. So we'll move on to the next item, sub-item
Mr.
30
Mayor?
that was pulled. Counselor Brecky, go
I'd
ahead.
have a point of clarification. I'd like to ask the city attorney a question. It's been troubling me for some time now. We've had 3 meetings, and it's troubling me as how we are implementing the end of the meeting, open mic public input portion of the meeting. And so my question for as it's playing out, the question that I have for the city attorney is, when can citizens comment on our discussion and vote? If I can maybe I can make it a little clearer. There's really 2 parts. With each agenda items, there's 2 parts. We have the part where we receive our fact-finding part, where we receive information from staff and from the public. And then we separate that part from the part where we enter into discussion and debate and vote. So this instruction instructs people that they're not allowed to comment on anything that we've done after the full agenda item has been determined. So my question is, when can people comment on the discussion and vote portion? We didn't have this problem when it was at the beginning of the meeting, but it's occurring now as a result of the way we're implementing it by moving it to the end of the meeting.
Well, I guess what I would start with is the law. When you talk about the implementation of this, people are entitled to comment during the time that the chair offers, and that satisfies South Dakota law for public input from the public. So there isn't, so the general members of the public can come in, they can provide that input. The council weighs that as part of their discussion. They make a decision. Are you asking why there isn't an additional public input after the decision is made?
I'm just saying, at the end of the meeting, I mean, when they speak on the agenda item, they're speaking to that agenda item. That's before we make a decision.
Correct.
And before we vote. And then at the end of the meeting, that's when we have what we call the open mic portion, when they can speak on any topic that they choose to speak on. But we're telling them that they can't talk about something that we've already decided. So that's preventing them from speaking to their feelings about our discussion and our vote portion. In other words, they cannot comment on the discussion or the debate that we had. They used to be able to do that when it was at the beginning of the meeting, because those actions, those actions were taken the week before, so they could discuss that. When can they do it now?
Well, I think you can pick your remedy, pick your poison, pick your arrangement. When the council makes a decision, one of the important provisions of the notice, as read by the mayor, is that the public has notice that if they want to, excuse me, comment on an item that the council is considering, they need to have notice that, look, if you want to speak toward that, particularly prior to the decision of the council, you need to raise it then, not later. Now, when you look at South Dakota law and you look at the case law and you look at federal law constitutionally, the purpose of public input is to give this opportunity, but the purpose of the meeting is to conduct the people's business and allow the council to do that. So there isn't any legal requirement sorry, frog in my throat, for people to be able to comment after that, other than they have any number of other opportunities to comment on that, be it social media, through the website, via email, direct contact with counselors, or they're able to come to a subsequent meeting, because of course there's no decision or impact that a member of the public can make after a decision is made, regardless of when the public input occurs.
Well, my concern is, and I think it's a really important one, is that if someone has come and sat here through this whole meeting, and maybe they didn't come to speak on a particular item, but they heard us after they heard the way we decided it, or they heard the public input and what happened, they didn't like what we did or why we did it, because they heard that discussion and voting portion of it, and then they wanted to comment on it. They've sat through the whole meeting. It comes to the end of the meeting. They'd like to comment on the final actions that we took and the discussion that we had about it. Maybe they want to inform us that we made a mistake or we didn't get all the information we should, whatever reason. But we're saying that that's an open public input time and that the topics aren't limited, but then we're limited to topic. The bottom line is, I think they get 2 bites of the apple when you have the public input portion at the end of the meeting. And the purpose of me raising this issue is because as I'm watching it play out, I'm seeing no opportunity in our meeting for people to discuss, to give public input, to the critical decision-making part of each agenda item that we have.
On this, we never had the opportunity previously, after we would vote, to talk about that item. So this is not, there's no change here. So when we would address an item previously and we would vote, we would no longer have a chance for people at that meeting to have public input on that, correct?
That's correct, because it was
So
at
if
the
they wanna
beginning of the
speak
meeting
on-
and those actions weren't taken, but now these people are sitting through the entire meeting. That action has all happened. It's all happened before their very eyes, and they're not allowed to comment on it.
I guess I'm confused on what exactly the problem is here.
Well,
But I don't know if we need to solve this at the dais right now. We voted on this. If you have a problem with the way public input works, then we need to bring that forward at the appropriate time.
What my purpose of bringing it up is, I do believe enough in it, that it's a serious enough problem. I believe that it's a prior restraint, content-based on free speech. I think it's a First Amendment violation, dead bang, clean and clear. I do. And so, for my purposes, I don't want to belabor it any longer.
Good.
I do want to lodge my objection to it, and pursuant to city ordinance, there's a provision that be put in the record, and then I won't have to do it at every meeting.
Good.
But I want an ongoing objection, that I'm objecting to the instruction that allows,
It's noted.
I want it in the record, Mayor.
It is.
So I need
It's
to say
noted.
it the way I want to say it. I'm objecting to the instruction that prohibits people from commenting on what happens at the meeting, at the close of the meeting during the open portion of the public input meeting, because I believe it's a violation of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. It's a content-based prior restraint, and that it violates our First Amendment.
Okay, noted.
And I would like that objection to be noted in the record, and I will not make it for all future meetings, but I'd like that to be ongoing, an ongoing objection.
Noted. Thank you.
And I would just add that putting it in the record is pursuant to Section 30021, members' objections to council action entered into the minutes.
And Counselor, I would just respond to that since you posed the question to me. I understand you have that opinion and you're entitled to that opinion. But if you want to have a legal discussion about the basis for why our city ordinance is legal and why constitutionally this current construct is acceptable, then we can have that and we can discuss precedent and we can cite precedent and talk about specifics to address those concerns, and I'd be happy to do that. Raising it now, obviously, didn't have an opportunity to do that, but would welcome that because I can assure you that as a matter of law, the current construct is legal. And so you're certainly entitled to your concerns, and we certainly can have that discussion. But if you're calling that into question, then I would respectfully disagree with you.
All right, thank you, Council. We'll move on to sub-item 30, pulled from the consent agenda. Councilor Starr, or actually, you want to read in the record, and we'll turn over to
Yes.
Councilor Starr.
Item number 6, subsection 30, planning and development housing. Provide eligible costs for COVID-19 related expenses for shelter operations. Executive Order 218, 20-4283, Bishop Dudley Hospitality House, $141,000.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My purpose in pulling this item from the consent agenda is a lot of one of the things that I hear is, what are we doing specifically for people who don't have housing during this pandemic? And I wanted to be able to showcase tonight the what we are doing. So I don't know who's here from the administration. If it's Director Shelley, thank you. Just give me a brief, or give us a brief overview of exactly how we're using these housing dollars and how it's helping people during this pandemic.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. Shelley Unruh, Housing Manager with the City of Sioux Falls. The agreement on the consent agenda is the City of Sioux Falls Housing Division utilizing the federal funding that we received through the CARES Act to provide additional support to Bishop Dudley Hospitality House to address the COVID-19 pandemic in excess of their original budget or funding source. The COVID-19 pandemic has placed an undue burden financially on Bishop Dudley, and so we have been providing and guidance and assistance to the shelter for them to be able to properly protect the congregate living situation. So the way that, some of the ways that they're utilizing that funding is through hand washing stations that they have so that upon entering the facility, you can immediately wash your hands, providing PPE for staff and guests of Bishop Dudley, providing additional safeguards during the lunchtime so that they can provide sneeze guards and that the like. They've had increased occupancy of the shelter, and so it's also been providing them the opportunity to get more sleeping mats for the guests of Bishop Dudley. So specifically, the agreement is to help offset some of the costs so that they can continue to provide good service to the guests that stay there and have them stay there safely and do the best we can to prevent an outbreak of COVID.
Perfect, thank you. The other quick question, and it popped up to it, the CARES Act dollars, this is housing money that we receive directly, or is this part of the COVID or the CARES Act dollars that we received as part of the 41.5 that we received from the state?
So this is the CARES Act funding that the Housing Division received directly from the federal government through our CDBG CV funding source.
Government, a good acronym to keep us going. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
All right, anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item here? All right, look for a motion, council.
To approve.
Second, Star.
All right, motion by Erickson, seconded by Starr to approve this. Any discussion on this? All right, we'll take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Pulled consent agenda item 34.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I need to read in the record, please. Thank you.
We'll read it into.
Sorry.
I know, I screwed that up the first time, so read it into the record and we'll go.
Communications, city website consulting services, consultant will perform all work to city website, including production of all materials, products, and modifications. 21-2024, rounded cube, $1,700 a month or $170 an hour for ad hoc services.
All right, Councilor Starr, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question is, I didn't realize how many people are in the web services development business in our community, but I got at least 3 calls asking me where this comes from and the name of the company and their background compared to local companies. So I don't know if Director Grigsby's here to speak on this one, but if you can give me just a little bit of background on this company and where they're from and what the services they provide for us.
Certainly. Good evening. Director Grigsby, Innovation and Technology Department. This particular agreement is for the ongoing maintenance of the website and the hosting for that. Rounded Cube was selected approximately 5 years ago. I do not have the information as to whether that was an RFP, but they were selected from multiple vendors. They were identified as a certified Sitecore partner. Sitecore is the platform that the website is built on. That platform was selected before I or any of my staff were here, and it's more a matter of just ongoing maintenance for that. I think it's important to note that there are service providers in Sioux Falls that do web development, but this is a proprietary platform, and we selected one 5 years ago, Rounded Cube. The purpose for moving forward with this is we will be looking at redeveloping and potentially revamping the website. This is more maintenance while we're looking at the research and conducting that to determine what direction we're going to take moving forward.
What timeline are we looking at doing redevelopment? Obviously, this is probably an annual agreement, so we're probably at least that far down the road before.
Certainly, this is a 12-month agreement. We can, there's a provision for early termination with 60-day notice. So at any point that we determine that we can move forward, we can opt out of that contract. Right now, the website is a priority for 2021, but that is a substantial undertaking, and it is estimated between 12 and 18 months before we see ourselves go live with a new platform.
Totally makes sense. Is Sitecore something we would continue in the future, or is it obviously platforms change over 5 years rather rapidly, I would assume, and so that's not necessarily, would we stick with a proprietary system?
That's unknown at this time. We would absolutely consider that. It has served us well up until this point. The challenge becomes when you're on a proprietary platform, the cost of talent to maintain that. So that would be one of the factors taken into consideration as we move forward.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item? All right, can I get a motion on this one?
Move to approve Erickson. Second Jensen.
All right, motion by Erickson, seconded by Counselor Jensen. Any discussion, council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We'll move on to the next item, please.
Item 37 is a conditional use permit appeal, 13390-2020, 1501 East 69th Street, Lot 2B, Block 1, EX, Lot H1, Shadow Creek, Second Edition, City of Sioux Falls. The applicant would like to open a full-service restaurant that would include on-sale alcohol and video lottery terminals, approved at the December 2nd, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, 5 yes, 0 no. Private applicants, Third Base Bar and Grill, LLC, Rob Kurtenbach.
Hey, Jason.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Jason Bieber representing Planning and Development Services. This is an application by Rob Kurtenbach. The owner is Michael Rogers. It's located at the southeast corner of 69th and Cliff Avenue in an existing multi-tenant building just north of the USF football stadium. It's about 1.10 acres in size. The purpose of this conditional use is the applicant is looking to remodel one of those existing tenant spaces and open up a full-service restaurant. This full-service restaurant is within 250 feet of a sensitive land use, and how we measure that is from the outside wall of a tenant space to the property line of the sensitive land use. We did consider or classify the USF Stadium as a sensitive land use because Sioux Falls Christian does hold sporting events there. So we did make them go through the conditional use process for that fact. But the closest actual distance to a Sioux Falls Christian property is about 407 feet. We did have some questions about some other existing schools and how close they would be to some full-service restaurants. This would be Roosevelt on 41st and Sertoma. There's a proposed full-service restaurant going into the new strip center on the west side of Sertoma. That'd be roughly 263 feet, so they would need a conditional use. There was a proposal for one on the south side of 41st Street. That'd be roughly 265 feet, and that would need a conditional use permit. And then we do have the Get and Go, which actually serves off-sale alcohol, and that needs to be 500 feet, so that actually would need a conditional use, or did need one at the time of their application for off-sale. The other one we looked at was O'Gorman. As you know, that's on 41st Street and Kiwanis Avenue. As you can see, there's several full-service restaurants and casinos within between 250 feet to 1,000 feet within that general area.
All right. Thank you, Jason. All right, we'll move on to public input for this item. So if there is anyone here to speak on this, you can come forward at this time. You have 5 minutes per speaker. Anyone here to speak on this? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. A.J. Swanson. I'm an attorney, and I have the privilege of representing the applicant in this case. Actually, Third Base is a locally owned and controlled LLC with 11 members, and I've met most of them. 5 or 6 of them are here tonight, and I can vouch for the fact that they're all much younger than I am. They all are involved in professional or trades practices here in the city, and I say I have respect for someone who wishes to open a restaurant in this day and age. I think it's important to note that this facility is going to be a family-oriented operation. It's rather small, has space for maybe 70 or 75 patrons. It will have a menu for kids. Its operation service time is expected to be about 11 a.m. until midnight. Granted, it does have this sensitive land use perspective, the college stadium. I do have a photo if I could publish.
You bet. You put it on there and we'll fire it up here. There you go. It'll turn. Close. There you go. Right direction. One more. All right.
So this is a photo taken very recently on the property line between the applicant's site and the Sioux Falls College or University of Sioux Falls stadium. This is a view looking immediately to the west. There's not only about a 6-foot fence, but quite a number of trees that separate this property from the stadium. I note in the planning staff's report that in considering sensitive land uses, it's important to see whether the effects can be redirected. And in this case, the observation, I believe, was that all of the effects really point in a direction away from the sensitive land use. So there is not signage at the rear of the building that will attract people to come and jump the fence or thread the trees to come and partake. Obviously, these people will need to be skilled in alcohol service. We think this use comports entirely with both the letter and the spirit of the city ordinance and would ask that it be approved. Any questions of me?
Not right now, AJ. We'll call you up if we have any. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? All right, seeing none. Any council members have to disclose any evidence received which was not received at this hearing or otherwise been posted online? All right, I'm not hearing any on that. So let's get a motion on the table.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Kiley, I believe.
This is Councilor Neitzer.
Sorry, Councilor Neitzer, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a discussion with one of the applicants, the proposed owners, and we just had a general discussion about what his use would entail. We talked about the menu that isn't part of the record, the diagram of the plan, which shows the number of seats, which is about 70, and just their perspective that they would have an accessory alcohol use, and the discussion regarding that the sensitive use determination was based on that Sioux Falls Christians' tendency in essentially a strip mall within the 300 feet or 500 feet, and that building that was identified by Jason Bieber. So just giving that perspective and their belief that it's a need that's in the community in that particular area, and that it would be run very well, and it would be a very small accessory use, and that there would be, I think, a handful of video lottery terminals, but it'd be in a very small room. So that would be my disclosure. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Kiley, go ahead.
Yes, I did have a very brief discussion with two of the applicants, and it did not include anything that has not already been presented by the applicant's legal counsel or by Mr. Bieber.
All right, thank you, Councilor. All right, so those disclosures are received in the record. Now we'll look for a motion on this item.
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second,
Move to approve.
All right, We'll give that to Counselor Erickson, seconded to Counselor, I'm going to give it to Counselor Kiley. That's in his district. So is that all right, Counselor Jensen? Second by Counselor Kiley. So now we'll move in a discussion amongst the council on this. Counselor Erickson.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Counselor Kiley, and then I'll move to you, Counselor Erickson.
Thank you very much. And sorry about that, Counselor Erickson and Counselor Jensen. But I did reach out as soon as I saw that this was going to be appealed. I did reach out to planning and request the information that Mr. Beaver presented to the full council in an email, as well as to everybody here again this evening. There are numerous cases across the city where we have impacts of this nature. And so I do not see why we would exclude this one, especially when it lies outside the established parameters. I'd like to point out that a university is not classified as a sensitive use. The planning department actually went above and beyond what they needed to do because Sioux Falls Christian is not the owner, but they are using the facility, but technically they're not the owner of the facility, and therefore it should not really be considered as a sensitive use. I urge approval of this item. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Erickson?
Turn my microphone on. Thank you. I understand this is part of the process, and we're here working through that appealed process. I'm a little sad that the person or the people that wanted it appealed, they did send notification, but they're not here to represent themselves. And so I question maybe how much of that or how important it was for that appeal. I don't know if that's a fair assessment or not, but that's all I'm left to do when they don't show. I was on social media not too long after I received the letter from the folks that appealed, and what I found very fascinating was there was a silent auction held at the particular school which offered several items of alcohol consumption, and I thought, how can we say no to this restaurant to go in when that very well place is offering alcohol on a silent auction fundraiser? And I thought it was very ironic that would be the cause behind it. And so I had hoped to ask those questions to those that appealed. Unfortunately, they're not here, but I do support this, and thank you for your investment in our community. I always applaud those that are willing to take a risk, especially now in a time where we're dealing with COVID and uncertainty, that I wish you the best of luck. And it's a great location for that growing southern part of Sioux Falls to have a neighborhood restaurant. I live west side, and we have a couple new neighborhood restaurants, and it's really nice to be able to stick close by, or if I'm attending a basketball game or whatever in the area, it's another option that I don't have to drive far if I only have 45 minutes in between games. So thank you again for your investment, and I will support this.
Thank you, Counselor. Other discussion on this item? All right, I'm hearing none, so let's take a roll call vote on this, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Next item is the second reading, item 38, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing a provisional one-time supplemental appropriation to fund a COVID-19 public health education campaign, Health Department $100,000. Sponsors, council members Brecky and Sale.
Counselor Sale, Counselor Brecky? All right, go ahead.
The purpose of this ordinance is to provide an ongoing funding mechanism to help with messaging during the COVID crisis. Particularly at this time, it's important that we have a solid and strong messaging plan for the inoculation process to encourage acceptance of the vaccine and introduction of it into the community to help us once and for all be into the final stages someday, I hope, of this COVID crisis. So it is it's to provide that funding stream. We were briefed on it earlier this afternoon. They've already have good plans and ideas and a plan in place for expending this money. in a 6-month, messaging campaign with multiple layers to reach a maximum amount of the community. And I hope that the council will support it. I would also just make the council aware that, should the crisis continue to go on, there may need to be another supplemental appropriation, because it could, if it goes on longer than 6 months, and there's some other additional messaging that is needed. But at this time, we'll just go with the 100,000, but I'll keep in close contact with our Director of Health, and if there is any additional need for additional funds, I'll bring that forward to the council.
All right, anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item tonight? All right, let's get a motion on the floor, please.
Move to approve, Brecky.
You want to speak to this? Yeah, come on up. Sorry, didn't see you hiding over there. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Megan Jorgensen, and I am an MD PhD student at the USD Stanford School of Medicine. If there has been one thing that's really stood out to me throughout this pandemic, it's the extreme lack of health literacy possessed by the general public. A glaring example of this has been the issue of wearing masks, which is not a political issue, it's an issue of public health. I have dedicated the past 7 years, along with the rest of my life, to understanding the science of medicine. And I still have a lot to learn, but I know how to find answers based on factual evidence. To me and other well-informed individuals, the fact that this pandemic has gone unchecked for so long is almost unbelievable. When it comes down to it, there are really only 2 options as to why an independent adult would choose not to follow these guidelines. Either 1, they do not know and understand the reasoning behind it, the science behind it, why it's so important. Or 2, they're simply selfish and unwilling to be slightly inconvenienced. I choose to believe the best of my fellow South Dakotans, that they just don't know. I'm very grateful to the members of this council who have been supporting public health. Unfortunately, for this to be fully effective and for this pandemic to come to an end, people need to be willing to follow it, which will really only come with knowledge. There's already massive misinformation spreading about the vaccine, and South Dakotans need to be able to make informed decisions with accurate information. That's why I firmly believe that this ordinance is necessary. I also urge you to remember that the issue of low health literacy will still be here after the pandemic ends. We have no way of knowing when the next pandemic or health crisis will come, and a better informed public will have a greater capacity to make decisions to protect themselves and their neighbors. I hope that you, as leaders, keep yourselves informed and continue to make decisions to protect the people that you serve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Megan. All right, did I miss anyone else tonight to speak on this? All right. Then we will look for a motion on this.
Move to approve, Brecky. But point of privilege, I gave Megan the thumbs up, but I didn't know she was coming. Megan's a former employee of mine when I owned Honey Baked Ham, and she was a rock star young woman. So the fact that at the time she was receiving scholarships to go to medical school and everything, and so I expected great things from her. I haven't seen her in years. So this was just a pleasant surprise to have her come and speak, and I'm very proud of her. So.
Second. All right, motion by Brecky, seconded by Sale. Is there discussion, council, on this item? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item 39, please.
Item 39 is the second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning a portion of property located west of South Ritchie Drive and south of West Broke Drive from the AG Agricultural District to the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban and RS Single Family Residential Suburban Districts number 13-329-2020 and amending the official zoning map of the city of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Private applicants Earhart Griffin and Associates, Damian Grable.
The applicant here is Damian Grable. The owner is Rick Dunlop. It's located west of South Ritchie Drive and north of West 41st Street. It's about 8.1 acres in size. The purpose of this rezone is the applicant is looking at constructing future single-family and twin homes on these lots.
All right, thanks, Jason. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Good evening.
Good evening, Damian Gribble, Earhart Griffin and Associates. I don't have anything further to add. I can answer any questions, but I look forward to your vote for approval.
Thanks, Damian. Anyone else here to speak on this one? All right, councilors, do you have any questions for Jason on this rezone?
Move to approve Erickson.
Second, Jensen.
Motion by Erickson, seconded by Jensen to approve. Discussion, council, on this? Hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
That passes 8-0 on item 40, please.
Item 40 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning portion of property located at North Career Avenue and West Frank Boyce Drive from the I-1 Light Industrial, LW Live Work O Office, and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts to the I-1 Industrial, LW Live Work, and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts, number 13340-2020, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Private applicants, Boyce Park Partners 1 LLC, Marilyn Bergeson.
The applicant and owner here is Boyce Park Partners LLC. It's located north of West Madison Street and east of North Marion Road. It's about 23.5 acres in size. And the purpose of this rezoning is the applicants are looking at constructing some future warehouse and light manufacturing uses on the property.
All right, thank you, Jason. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item? Councilors, you got any questions for Jason on this?
Move to approve Erickson.
Second, Jensen.
Motion by Erickson, seconded by Jensen on this. Any discussion amongst the council here? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote on it, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Item 41 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 5001 South Sycamore Avenue from the AG Agricultural District to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District, number 13392-2020, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Private applicants, Common Land 2, Kirby Mullenberg.
The applicant and owner here is Kirby Mullenberger, located at the southwest corner of East 57th Street and South Sycamore Avenue. It's about 2.07 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at constructing a retail strip center on that corner.
All right, thanks, Jason. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Councilors, do you have any questions for Mr. Bieber here?
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Councilor Erickson, seconded by Jensen to approve this item. Do we have any discussion on this one, council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky? Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item 42, please.
Item 42 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 2100 East Walnut Street from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban and REC Recreation Districts to the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District, number 13381-2020, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Private applicants, Willardson Lund Engineering Corporation, Eric Willardson.
The applicant here is Eric Wildson. The owner is Jeff Shatkowski. It's located north of East Rice Street and west of I-229. The size of the actual rezoning area is about 0.86 acres. The total development size of this parcel, though, is 4.75 acres. The purpose of this rezoning and this parcel is to subdivide it for 11 twin home lots.
Thanks, Jason. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name's Eric Willardson Lund Engineering. Jeff Shatkowski, the owner, developer, is also here tonight. I don't have anything to add. You will be acting on the preliminary subdivision plan, a subsequent item, but I'd answer any questions or be able to respond. There may be some public input after this.
Okay, thanks, Eric. We'll call you up if need be. Appreciate it. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? All right, Council, do you have any questions for Jason or the applicant on this one?
Move to approve, Erickson. Oh,
Second.
did you have, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to move too fast. Go ahead. I'll rescind my motion.
Come on
There's
up, sir.
Public input.
This is Jeff Miloa, live at 2100 or 2105 East Walnut, right where the Oberg Circle heads south there, right where that narrow strip is there. My house is there. I've got some concerns, I guess, with you guys doing the second reading on this. There's supposed to be some changes on this. I haven't seen them. They're not up here. If the changes aren't done, I don't see why we should be doing a second reading on this and okaying it. I realize it's a city project, but we got detention ponds, we got lighting problems. I got cars going to be coming up and shining their lights in my house, which I think is kind of light pollution in my words. I don't think it's right. So, but I brought my concerns up to Jeff, and he's like to try to work with it. But we believe that I believe that the city's got a lot to do with this project. So we're hoping that they'll take care of some of the stuff. But one of the things is how the people are going to get out of that Oberg Circle and get onto Walnut. If they head east or west, that's the only way out of there. If they go towards St. Paul, they just got to go around the block, and it's just a mess. So if they could angle that street maybe to the west a little bit, right on the exit there on the south end, then they could probably keep the lights out of my house a little bit more for a little bit longer, maybe the last 50 feet or something, just angle it a little bit to the west. And that way all the traffic coming in and going out could go to the west like it should, because they're not going to want to go any other direction. So, but it's going to be just a T right in front of my house. I haven't been told or seen if there's any street lights. If they are they going to be guarded so I don't have a street light right in front of my house, shining in my bedroom window? Let's see here. Have some notes here. But the changes, there's supposed to be changes, that just the changes haven't showed up. I haven't seen them. We got a detention pond going in also. If you look just to the east of this property, the city has their mosquito catcher over there. And from what Denise with the mosquito department tells me, that is one of the worst areas of the city of Sioux Falls for mosquitoes. When we're going to stick a detention pond in, it doesn't make sense. The city has got a big problem with laying one lousy little snowblower tire out in your yard, because that might hold a little bit of water. Or a bird bath that isn't maintained. It holds water. That holds mosquitoes. And they're going to put a whole detention pond in. Not only is this detention pond deal concerned, who owns the detention pond? Because this is partially a city project, does the city own it? Is a private developer going to own it? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to clean it when all the pot bottles and stuff come off all the streets from all these properties and go into that detention pond? I haven't been able to get any of those answers. I went down to the city today to get those answers. None of them are answered. I would like to have more answers before this gets finalized. And that's what I got to say, I guess. Thank you for listening.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is anyone else here to speak on this then tonight? All right. Now we will move to that motion, then we can move to discussion on it.
Move to approve.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Erickson, seconded by Jensen. Discussion then on this item, Councilor. Councilor Erickson, go ahead.
Either for city staff or Mr. Willitson, I don't know what changes were discussed or we're not seeing on the map. If one of you wants to discuss that. And then also, if you can just sprinkle in a little bit of talking about lighting. I think sometimes that's misunderstood as far as, I mean, I have more calls begging for streetlights than people saying, do not put them near my house. And so I want to be mindful of how street lighting works, and then also if you could adjust the curved street and why or why not that could work, as well as the detention pond.
Sure. Just to reiterate, this is actually the rezoning portion of it, so it's just that little section. We do have the preliminary subdivision plan that's coming up farther along in the agenda. The preliminary subdivision plan, as we kind of go through that, has to do with preliminary lot and block layout. So we've had our city staff look at this specific development, just like any development that would happen like this. They have given the approval for the preliminary plan. Obviously, the next step with that, we would go into development engineering plans, then we'd go into construction plans, and then they would actually physically be able to plat these off and actually build on them. So as Eric indicated earlier, his engineering firm did the preliminary plan, but there's still 2 or 3 phases yet to kind of get down a little bit more of, hey, where's the water going to go for sure? Where's the sewer going to go for sure? Where's the best place to put that detention pond? Because as we kind of go through this, these developments need to be able to have to detain their own water so it goes off at pre-developed rates. So our drainage team is going to look at this again at least 2 more times and really get that best idea of where that should go. And we'll kind of show you the preliminary layout of that in the item that comes up later in the agenda. Typically, streetlights, as like you indicated, more people do want streetlights. I have one outside of my house. You don't really notice them in your house at all. They'll probably, since this will be a new urban street, currently it is gravel, I'm assuming that they would put a streetlight, usually I think on my block, I think there's 1 per block kind of in my area. So I would assume they'd put one in this area at some point.
Okay, and then my one question, so, okay, the map that we're on right now, when you come out of that street, is that exactly where his home is?
I believe a portion of that goes into where his house is, and we can continue to work with the applicant as we go back with the development engineering phase to see if we can get that shifted a little bit. I know there's some it has to be pretty close to that just to be able to make lots work on both sides. If you can't make lots work on both sides, it's really not a viable project for not only the city to invest some funds, but also the developer to make accessible housing within that area. So definitely something we can take into consideration. And it sounds like Jeff has been talking to the owner of that property, and us as staff, we always are pretty cognizant. We don't want car lights shining in people's property if we can absolutely help it. So.
Right. So I just encourage you, sir, to stay involved and engaged, make sure they've got your number so they can work with you. I think that they want to meet your needs and that there's a lot of questions being met, a lot of questions still being answered as they move along. The last thing is you don't want to say we don't want a drainage pond and then all that water run into your yard. That would be way worse than an actual drainage. And we know that the land is going to be developed, and this seems to make sense as far as that development is considered as far as being next to those other single-family homes. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Other questions, Councilor Starr?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, on the layout here, there's spaces between the homes, like where North Chicago goes and the dotted line that's there. There are some homes that are, back up to that. So why is that space different?
So when those homes are platted in Wiley's addition, the homes to the west, they were platted and their section of North Chicago Avenue was platted off. So that 33 feet of right of way. This parcel had never been platted prior to that, so it never platted that 33 feet of right of way. Now that we've gone along, everybody realizes we don't need Chicago Avenue going there. So I believe all of the property owners on that west side are going to be petitioning the city council at some point to vacate that rest of that right of way, and then that property would return to them.
Perfect, thank you. That was it for that part of it.
Jason, while we have him here. All right. Other discussion, council.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Starr.
I guess there's been references that this is a city project, and I know we're involved in this project, so I guess I'm interested either if Shelley's here or Director Eckhoff could kind of give us a brief overview of what the city's part of this project is?
Good evening, Shelley Unruh, Housing Manager with the City of Sioux Falls. The Housing Division is investing in the acquisition and infrastructure development for this Walnut Division. So our investment came in the acquisition of the property and then in the construction of the street for this development in an effort to reach our BHAG goal of creating 1,000 accessible units by 2022. So this project was brought to us and it seemed in line with our goals and our funding sources available. So we are investing federal funds to assist with the development of this project.
I know this is early, but what happens is the neighborhood only gets a couple of shots in public to talk about these things, and then it kind of all goes forward. I mean, it's the steps that naturally have to process. But one of the questions that I had received from a neighbor, what are we projecting for homes that will go on these lots, and kind of what would they typically projected to list for?
Sure, and I'll defer to, is Jeff here?
Yeah, he's in the back.
Yes, I'll defer to Jeff because he's the builder. But with our investments, they are required to be an affordable home so that somebody that is 80% of area median income can purchase this home. But I'll let Jeff talk to the look, cost, all that kind of stuff for the list.
Gotcha.
Jeff Shawkowski with Sundance Builders. So specifically, Pat, what was your question?
What I'm looking for is that, yes, they're going to be in that accessible range of 80% AMI, but what would we expect the houses to list for? What kind of income will it take to qualify? I guess, tell me a little bit about what you're doing. And I know we can do that during the preliminary subdivision, but this is as good a time as any. But give me the dream, I guess, is what I'm, how it's going to fit in with the neighborhood.
The homes are going to be sold for under $200,000 to meet the requirements with the agreement with the city, to meet their goals. The twin homes are going to be approximately 1,500 square feet on the upper unfinished basement. We've done a number of projects like this with a couple of the nonprofits in the city and over on Harrington, to be specific, and they're going to look just like this. This is something that we've given to the neighborhood in a meeting this fall and on a Zoom meeting this last November. So people have had an idea of what's going in there, and if they have any questions, they can just go over to the houses over on Harrington off of 6th and Cleveland. They're going to be almost identical to that. So, I mean, I don't know what else to.
Nope, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. It has changed, and the plan has moved forward over the time from the first neighborhood meeting to the time that you've been moving through this. So I appreciate that part of it. I appreciate you're willing to work with the neighborhood. The hardest part, and it's not just you, but the neighborhood gets some expectations and there's no guarantees for them. And that's always difficult when we do these infill lots, and it's not just you, it's the process. We'll have another one here shortly where we're doing a rezone that's going to have the same kind of thing where we have to look at that. So I just would encourage you to continue to be as open and forthright with the neighborhood as you can be, because again, things do change, and it's a nice little community part of our city in Riverside, and I think this will be an addition once it comes to fruition. So I just think it's difficult for the neighbors to totally understand the process, because I don't always know the process, and I'm here every night. So.
And I can appreciate that and all the neighbors' concerns, and we've had, like I said, several meetings. I've spoke with several of the neighborhood individuals. We've spent thousands of dollars on some of their own personal improvements. Jeff's was one, as a matter of fact. So we have no objection to working with the neighborhood to comply with what would fit for their needs. So, anything else?
All right, thanks, Jeff. Any other questions for anyone here or discussion on this item, council? All right, I'll call a vote on it then, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson? Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that item passes 8-0. Item 43, please.
Item 43 is the second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning portion of property located at southwest of West 22nd Street and South Ellis Road from the O Office District to the LW Live Work District, number 13281, 2020, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 4-1 with the following conditions. 1, maximum height of 2 stories, 35 feet for any buildings further than 200 feet from Ellis Road. And 2, minimum level C buffer yard required along south property line. And 3, maximum of 80 total residential units on site. Private applicants, KN Construction.
The applicant and owner here is Kelly Nielsen. It's located at the southwest corner of West 22nd Street and South Ellis Road. It's just over 4 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is the applicant is looking at constructing some apartments. In front of you here was the original concept submitted by the applicant back in November. This did include 2 3-story buildings with 30 units per building, and then 1 3-story building with 48 units in that building, for a total of 108 units. Additionally, the applicant was proposing 178 parking spaces, which is 4 more than required, and then they did have one of their access points onto South Mary Beth Avenue. Neighborhood meeting was held on November 18th, and some of the concerns the neighborhood had included traffic, safety, decreased property values, drainage, parking, privacy, compatibility with existing land uses, and noises. The applicant then did come back with a revised concept plan and submitted this. This revised plan indicated a 1 2-story building in the center portion of the lot with 32 units, and then 1 3-story building with 48 units adjacent to Ellis Road on the east side of the property. They essentially decreased the number of units from 108 originally proposed to 80 proposed in this revised concept. They also increased the off-street parking from 4 more parking spaces are above and beyond what the ordinance requires to 23 more spaces. Some of the neighbors' concerns were parking within the residential neighborhood if they didn't have enough parking spaces. So they have increased it to 23 above what's required by the ordinance. And then they also removed their access point onto Mary Beth Avenue and put both access points onto 22nd Street, which should filter between 90 and 95% of the traffic. Should go east, or should go right out of there over to Ellis Road. Future traffic signal is expected to be there in the next couple of years, so the majority of the traffic should go that way. Additional concerns from the neighborhood that we heard also was drainage. Water coming off this site is going to utilize the existing stormwater detention or stormwater system and drain south to that existing regional BMP that's just by the Sanford Wellness Center over off of Lancaster. Traffic says they indicated that 22nd Street couldn't handle that amount of traffic. It is classified as a collector street and is designed to handle roughly 2,500 cars per day. So it should be able to handle this increased traffic of apartments. And also T. Ellis Road is a major arterial street, our west side corridor, and that's projected to handle between 25,000 to 28,000 vehicles per day. And just to give you a little idea of how many that is, currently 57th Street, the most traffic in certain sections of 57th Street is just under 20,000 cars. So if you think of driving on 57th Street, this will be another increase of, roughly 50%. So a very, very busy road on that west side. And also fire concerns. Both buildings will be sprinkled, and the fire department has looked at the revised concept plan and indicated it meets a requirement for fire truck access in and out of there. We did also have a couple of questions at the first reading about where some additional apartments have been zoned that are located within an arterial street and collector and adjacent to single family. So we've put together a couple of examples of that. This one, some of you may remember, this is 85th and Brett. This was the rezoning from Ag to RA2. They were looking at doing 96 units on 4.38 acres, or about 1 unit for every 1,990 square feet. which is less than what the current applicant is proposing at 22nd and Ellis, and that's at 1 unit for every 2,100 square feet. So this is a little bit more dense than that. We have 26 in Katy, which is just southwest of this proposal. This is 120 units on 5.5 acres. This is roughly 1 unit per every 2,000 square feet, so this is more dense than what the applicant is proposing. 57th in Sycamore, this is 260 units on 14.6 acres. This is a little bit less dense. This is about 1 unit for every 2,450 square feet. Similar, but a little bit less dense. Then we have 69th and Louise, just south of the Heart Hospital. This is 133 units on 4.36 acres. This is actually 1 unit per every 1,400 square feet, so quite a bit more dense than what the applicant's proposing. And then we have this one that just opened on 41st and Veterans Parkway. This is 180 units on 8 acres, or 1 unit per every 1,950 square feet. So a little bit more dense than what the applicant's proposing. I know the applicant is here as well as several neighbors in the neighborhood to provide input tonight. So.
All right, thank you, Jason. All right, this time we'll move to public input. So anyone who wants to speak on this topic can come forward at this time. Come on up, ma'am. Good evening.
I have my own, not as professional map. So.
That's good. Jim will work on it. You can go ahead and get started, and he'll work on the screen. Can you state your name?
My name's Jeanette Finet, and I have property, an acre of property just south of the development. I've been there for 25 years before anybody was even there. So I know the area well. The first concern with the neighbors is when the property was annexed into the city, it was zoned office. And then not super, short time later, then it was changed to live work. And I don't know why you just don't call it multi-housing. That's pretty much what it is. But so with that information of it being zoned office, a lot of people were purchasing homes and building in that neighborhood. And the majority of the homeowners are not happy about it. The first meeting was pretty tense, way more tense than I even thought it would be. So I guess our main concerns are, first, the property values going down around this property. We don't want apartments because of safety, privacy concerns. Right across the street to 22nd, and that's right here, there's a daycare. And also, when you go west on 22nd Street, there is Discovery Elementary and Memorial Middle School. So we know that the street can take the traffic because we've seen that increase quite a bit. What I'm worried about is school kids, pedestrians, that kind of thing. So that's what we're worried about. If something's going to happen and nothing's going to get fixed until there's an accident or someone gets hurt. We're worried about the size of the buildings. Even though they're only 2 stories, they are a big expanse of space. And we just don't like how that's going to block off the regular residents from the street. We're worried that there's going to be more congestion, mainly turning in and out of the daycares. With the apartments, there's going to be certain times where it's really kind of bad. We're worried about noise that is created from having that many people in one place, and then trouble. Anytime you hear some things on the news, a lot of times it's in these kind of buildings with, a big group of apartments or something similar to that, or condos. We have seen probably 8 different proposals for this property. I'm worried that we're not even going to know what's actually going to be built there. If it is approved, it keeps changing often. So we're concerned about that too. A lot of neighbors have not always been able to make it because, and I'm just addressing the comment earlier, this is the 3rd hour I've taken off of work for a total of 8 minutes of input. And that's, publicly 8 minutes of input. So it gets a little frustrating to try to catch everything as it's happening. The thing that bothers me too is I love the neighborhood. I've been out there alone for quite a while. We just got sidewalks. There's a big long stretch between the streets. I've seen neighbors and people out, and I've never ever seen that before. I mean, it's just wonderful. And I just don't want to be afraid to go out, and I just don't want to be unsure about who I'm living around. Privacy for me is a big deal because that whole building's going to be looking at my house. And I know that things will probably change, but I'm worried about them. I mean, there's a daycare there. I just think it's kind of bad. Now, the things that are circled in pink are all of the apartments, the townhomes, the twin homes. There's a lot of developments out there right now for apartments, and I just don't want to become an apartment alley, I guess. The newest ones are a little further south. Lloyd is just starting to dig one south of the Sanford Clinic. And then we have one here. Paradigm is just starting to build that one. That one's already as close to the sidewalk as you can get, and it's 3 stories high so far. I don't know how much more they're adding. They keep adding levels. These aren't just little buildings. I mean, they're big buildings, and there's a cluster of them. So it's not like it's just a little bit. I mean, a lot of these developments have U-shaped formations, and we also have, on the other corner, that's a big U-shape with townhomes. And then up north by 12th Street, that's all Williamsburg, which is affordable housing. So I guess I feel like we have a lot of options for that, but to put an apartment right where they're planning on putting it is just ugly, and it's going to disrupt the neighborhood. So we were thinking it would be office. So that's the main concern there.
Thank you for your input. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? Good evening.
Hi, Gabriel Williams. I live on Catherine, which is about a block over from where they want to put the apartments. I mean, I just want to pretty much echo everything that she just said. I mean, everybody I've talked to in the neighborhood is not welcoming these apartments. They're being placed in the middle of a single-family home neighborhood. I mean, it's basically just going to change the entire layout of the neighborhood, and it's just going to, from what everybody talks about, and right now, what we can see, it's going to just pretty much ruin it. So you're not going to be able to enjoy, what we can enjoy now, the quietness, the lower amount of traffic, throwing 80 units, 2 cars a unit, 160 cars. I mean, they're not going to just stick on Ellis. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, you have to use the common sense here. They're not going to just go to Ellis, come back home. They're going to go down Mary Beth. All the little kids, all the people that have bought houses out here with the understanding that there was not going to be apartments in their backyard. And now all of a sudden, Nielsen has sold a majority of these lots to people with the understanding that, hey, this was going to be office. This was not going to be these 80-unit apartment buildings. And now all of a sudden they want to say, oh yeah, by the way, we changed our mind. We want to put profit over people now. And we just want to go in here and just put as much as we can, get as much money as we possibly can. It's not fair. We're all the little guy here. Nielsen's got all the money. They can, apply for this. They can do what they want because it sort of fits into the rules, but it's just going to destroy the character of the neighborhood. I mean, to have all these single-family homes and then throw 2 huge apartment buildings right in the middle of it and just expect people to just lay down and take it. It's just not fair. It really isn't. And I just want to voice my objection to this. It's just, I can't do much about it, but tell you guys that I'm totally opposed to this, and I hope you vote no.
All right, thanks, Gabriel. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight?
Hi.
Good evening.
I'm just going to open my phone here and might show you something off of that. My name is Brandon Oatkin. I live about 75 yards from the proposed rezoning on Mary Beth Street there, the original drawing. I was just down from that. 7 of my 8 neighbors have small children or infants, so there's a lot of families out here. I was one of them that moved out here last February with my wife. Annexed in, obviously, last March this was, his office and residential and everything he had back there. We hope he finishes it and finishes it well. He does a good job out here, did a good job with the daycare and everything else, but we just don't want apartment complexes next to our homes, plain and simple. So I guess we're just seeking to protect our community out here. I mean, our community out here, my wife's a nurse, all my neighbors, they work service jobs, diesel mechanics, builders. There's a cop that lives behind me, retired fireman, firefighter down the street. None of them want it. These are service workers of the community at the heart of the workforce, and they want to protect their housing. They want to protect their community, their children's safety, and their safety. We know what our neighbors look like. We know what they drive. I know what my neighbors' kids look like. And when you bring in tenants and 80 doors in this space right next to our houses, you lose that sense of community. You have people walking past your house that you don't know anymore, and you lose your sense of community. With that, we've brought up our concerns with crime, water, noise, everything else that comes with it. And it's been pretty stressful, this whole process. I got a mail-in letter the day of this meeting. On my way home, opened it, first thing I thought about was my kid. Just had a baby boy last April. Quarantine kind of helped out because I got to spend more time with him, but I thought about him and his safety. You want your children to be safe, and you think of it in the perspective of a parent, okay? I want him to be safe. I want him to have a safe place to play. I see the neighbors' kids riding their bikes along the sidewalk. It's a nice community. We moved out here because we thought we had good sense, and so did everybody else when they bought and built out here, and put down their down payments to come live out here. This is a community, and putting an apartment complex at the front of it, it doesn't mesh with what we see as our community, and are not for it. So, speaking with the developer last meeting, he seems like a good guy. We hope he finishes the community well. And we think that it was done right the first time, and how he zoned it residential out here years ago, and how this was zoned in residential to build homes. And some things Jason noted was a buffer of noise in the last meeting, and the traffic on Ellis Road. Well, living out there, he says probably the busiest street on the west side. I don't know when you moved up from Kansas, but there's about 5 or 6 streets on the west side that are busier than Ellis Road. It will get busier with the development out there, Fairway and all these apartments going up. It's going to get far busier. It will bring more noise, but that's not a concern of our neighborhood here. We want to keep our community intact. When you drive through it and you enter the community right there, it's at the intersection of it. You either coming at Mary Beth or you coming at 22nd Street, okay? And you have to drive past it. Now, the daycare next door, they have 200 kids. They use the sidewalks, they use this infrastructure, and it's just going to beat up our infrastructure. It's going to ramp up traffic. They said by 600 cars an estimate per day. Now, I don't know if this is at the 80 units or the 108 units before, but it's just a lot of traffic to put into this area, especially with all the single family and families around. A lot of money worth of real estate in here, down the way from it that Kelly had developed, and it's a nice community. You think of all the water that may come down if we have one of those years like we did in 2017 where all the water came around, and if it has to make its way through that community into the drainage pond, we have a water problem now. So, I mean, I just thinking of my kids in this scenario. That's when I'm at peace. I'm a selfie guy myself, Paul. I take a picture with my kid. I ain't worried about the tasks and other things, work, family, COVID, nothing. It all goes away for a few seconds when I hit that button and hit click. Take pictures of my little guy, it's fun. But that's what I'm worried about here, and I'm worried for my neighbors. So, don't want it to change. We're seeking to protect some of the values within one Sioux Falls, so in our community. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brian. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Andy Harmon, and I'm with Nielsen Properties. I will be the one personally managing this site when it's up and running. I have 7 years, almost 8 years of experience in residential housing, apartments, condos, things like that. So Completely understand the neighborhood's concerns. As they have stated, down farther on Ellis, apartments are what are going up. Sioux Falls is growing. Not everybody moving to this town, single, married, with a family, can afford to buy a house. The housing market is incredibly active right now. Basically what we are looking, and we've researched, they're trying to offer affordable housing to either recently graduated professionals, people moving to town with, need that transition place from an apartment till they're able to buy a house if they move from out of state or something like that, or elderlies that just don't want the maintenance of snow removal, lawn care, things like that. They like having a neighbor next to them. They actually like, seeing people daily, the mailman, whatever it may be. We do have the apartments, Ellis Estates, which is a 2-story apartment complex, and then a combination of twin homes down there, and we haven't had any issues. We have kids playing, out front of things, and haven't had any issues with the community having any objections to it. With the daycare and the school district, we will have a manager on site. There will be 24-hour maintenance, and then we will also be part of the Sioux Falls Crime Free, which any applicant that applies does have to pass all of the screening background. So there are certain people that will not be able to rent apartments depending on their criminal history and things like that. So it's not a fly-by-night type of thing. We are very established and ready to take on the new challenge and do it very well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy. Anyone else here to speak tonight? Come on forward. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Kelly Nielsen, I'm the applicant. Yeah, it's a project, it's been a little bit of a challenge. We've definitely been trying to hear the concerns of our neighbors. As a lot of them have shared, I have built the majority of the property around it. I didn't do anything on the property to the direct south, but I am the owner of all the lots to the east across the street to the west across the street on Mary Beth. Them are all empty lots. I intentionally own them and left them because of this project. I wanted to not have any challenges there. I don't see any challenges when I go to sell them lots and build homes. I own the majority of the property still today to the north, so I kind of have it surrounded besides Ellis Estates and then directly to the south. We did meet with everybody in November, not everybody, sorry. We met with roughly 30 neighbors that were invited out to come, and we listened to their challenges diligently. As one of the proponents stated, that it was a little bit tense and stressful, but it's because their emotion, it's their home, it's their kids. I respect it very much and what they're doing. We changed the density of our project, we changed the traffic, we changed the driveways. The closest building to Mary Beth is, roughly 150 feet, give or take. We definitely kept people away from that neighborhood at their request, and we changed the design drastically and made a fair amount of concessions to make it work for them. So we've added extra buffer yards. I'm working with neighbors and trees on that south side to even soften it up a little bit more. With Ellis Road being an arterial and 22nd being a collector, I feel it's the right location for this type of project, and I guess that's kind of where I'm at, if you have any questions.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Anyone else here to speak on this topic? All right, seeing no more public input, last call on that, all right. Counselors, do you have any questions for staff tonight on this? All right, look, Counselor Erickson, go ahead.
Thank you. Jason, if I could ask you, and I should know this, and I apologize, I couldn't find my chart in my desk fast enough. If it were left as office, what could it be?
Sure. A couple of options. It could be 2-story. It could actually be apartments in the office. It could be 2 stories, but you'd have to have the apartments above the 1st story. So you could do offices and then apartments on the 2nd story. Typically, that's not going to probably happen there because it's just, you can't make the numbers work with that. One of the things that it could be is residential compatible storage units. They could put storage units on there that look like apartment garages and things like that. That whole parcel could be part of that. Could be a daycare, bank, insurance agency,
what's the density? How dense could it be with office space? And I know I say this every time, I'm shocked that office allows apartments, and I know the reason is because you would have the office on the main floor and the apartments above, much like we've seen along 57th Street and some of those busier arterial streets. It's very common and it's successful. I get that this is a little bit more residential and maybe doesn't make sense, but that would be an option. What would be the density of that?
Well, we typically don't have we don't have density requirements anymore with offices and apartments. We have those sizes. So offices can be 2-story, and the office district could be 2-story, and you could build them as big as you wanted, size-wise, length. Just you'd have to meet the parking requirements and obviously setbacks and buffer yards. In the multifamily zoning district, that's where we would go by size. So the RA1 allows maximum of 2 stories and 24 units per building. So essentially as many 24-unit buildings as you could fit on there, you could do. And then the RA2, which is what they're looking at, that's 3 stories and up to 48 units per building. So as many of those buildings as you can put on there, you can get, as long as the parking and that kind of stuff. So density, we kind of went away from that. It was more just the mass of the buildings.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that. I always, as we go through some of these that have more concerns, I think it's important to say, okay, here's what it's zoned now and what it could be. Here's what they're proposing and what it could be. However, there are several restrictions based on what's being brought forward, that it's not that highest use for that. There are some limitations with that. I will say the first map, if you could do that side by side again with me. Thank you. I'm a West Sider. It's no secret. I talk about West Side all the time. I know I serve at large. So I know this neighborhood very well. Have friends all over this area and kids' friends and whatever. I will say I did have some grave concerns as this went out onto Mary Beth. I personally didn't think that was the best way because it gave you too many options to go left or right. Moving those to the other side, naturally, I travel Ellis daily. It is a beautifully designed street now. It used to be almost like, I have kids, so Cars movie, Mater driving down the road. I mean, it was just awful, and you wanted to avoid that road at any cost. Now that it's done, it's incredible. It really gets traffic moving. I would really, really, really have concern that people are going to use Mary Beth. Maybe if they're going church back to Catherine Drexel, they have a school, maybe that makes sense. But the vast majority of people are going to go on that 22nd to Ellis, and whether it's to school or take Ellis North to 12th Street and over and around, that is the natural flow of the traffic and makes sense. I do also, just seeing different apartment buildings coming up, I appreciate this being adjusted and close to T. Ellis as possible, but also keeping it safe with that in mind. And then also keeping the parking inside so it's not as viewed. One thing that, as I've sat here for almost 7 years now, this sentiment that apartment owners and apartment dwellers are scumbags has got to stop in this community. It's just not what it is. People live in apartments for the American dream. Housing is ridiculously priced, and so we've got to stop this idea that if you live in an apartment building, you're a bad person. It's just not true. I'm almost certain every single person in this building, in this room today, knows somebody that lives in an apartment building, and it doesn't mean you're a criminal. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. And so I get really frustrated with that because we've got to have housing options in this community. It does need to make sense. And the first plan, I did not like at all. I understand and I hear the neighbors. I did not realize that the lots on the other side of Mary Beth are still vacant. I think that was probably a good option to have those still vacant, to maybe have additional transition housing. I know that there are a lot of folks that are looking for housing. While we've seen a lot pop up on the west side, The apartments that are on the west side are far less than other areas in the community. I know this might not be popular with some of the folks here, but for me, I see that this makes sense when it's on a collector and an arterial. You're on two busy streets. As a mother, I would never, ever build a home that backed up to Ellis. It would be so hard to me to pull out on Ellis, and that's why we've gone away from that. And the danger of protecting those folks on there used to happen, but it's changed as our city has continued to grow further west, east, north, south, all angles. We've been really busting at the seams. I think that we really have to keep in mind what it could have been and what it could be the next time. And so for that reason, I will be supporting this rezone.
Councilor Neitzer, do you have a question for Jason or was it a comment?
Actually, I do have a comment. I can hold until we make a motion, I suppose.
Any other questions for Jason while we have Jason up here, Councilor Brackey?
What is the zoning history? How many times has it been changed?
Just once. So this was annexed in by the applicant 2 years ago or somewhere in that. And once it was annexed in, then they did the zoning and preliminary subdivision plan to what you currently see right now. So this lot was zoned office first.
And so has it been zoned office when all of these surrounding neighborhood was developed? So when they came in, this is what they thought they were getting on that?
It was zoned office, but yeah, at the same time as all the other development was brought in. So before any of their houses were built, it was zoned office.
So assuming they did their due diligence when they purchased it, they thought there was going to be office there.
That's what it was zoned, yes, or built, correct.
Thank you.
Other questions for Jason? All right, maybe look for a motion. We can move into some discussion then on it.
Move approval, Neitzer.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
All right, motion by Neitzer to approve, seconded by Councilor Jensen. All right, we'll move into discussion. Councilor Neitzer, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, please. I have a number of notes I'm going to go through as quick as I can, but first I have to say, as well as Councilor Erickson, I'm very, with respect, I'm very troubled by the undercurrent and the insinuation of, I guess I would say, those people in quotes. This is not the first time we've heard this, and I think as a council we need to strongly repudiate that, the kind of the blanket assertion that people that live in apartments are, I guess for lack of a better term, scumbags or people to be afraid of, or your children won't be as safe around them. I think we really, really need to push back on that because it's very, very unfortunate and it's unfair. I live in this district, I represent this district, and I actually lived just blocks away from here for about 8 years. I just recently moved a little bit south, and for what it's worth, I'm now right next door to an apartment, and I knew that, and I have no concerns about it whatsoever. I respect the concerns of neighbors. That makes us look at this even harder, which I did, and we need to mitigate negative effects, and the applicant should do things to mitigate those effects. So taking a look at this, when you look at the original proposal and then the adjusted proposal, I was actually somewhat shocked at the changes that were made because it was substantial. It was more than what I would even think that we might even require, and I think the applicant deserves a lot of credit for that. So the things that we hear about a lot are the height. He dropped the height of the building closest to residential from 3 stories to 2 stories. He dropped the number of units. People worry about density, and with that comes more traffic. The thing that I had the biggest concern about was that access onto Mary Beth, because I just lived just south and a block over from Mary Beth for many years, so I knew that area pretty well. And I did have a little bit of concern about that, and that was taken out. Honestly, my biggest concern would be for those homes that are on Mary Beth, and I think a couple things are important. Number one, the access is going away to Mary Beth, which everybody's going to get on to 22nd, and they'll invariably, they only have a couple hundred feet, they're going to go to Ellis Road predominantly. They're not going to turn and go back and go down Mary Beth unless they have some destination that they're headed towards, but it should be very, very, very minimal. The other thing that's really important is if you look at the plan, look at how far he pushed that building off of Mary Beth. I don't know if we have the overlay, but there was an overlay of this plan over a satellite image, and you could see just how far back that building would be from the existing single family. I know it's like Jason may be moving to it. So if you look at that, it's near the very end of the backyard. I mean, when you look straight north from those homes, they essentially are looking at green space or a few garages, and they're going to have no curb cuts on there. So the height of that building is pushed way, way back, and that's a 2-story building, not a 3-story as was proposed. So I guess I look at this and I say, what have you done to mitigate the impacts? And you look at these things that he's done and moving that building over and changing the access points, dropping the number of units. And then I guess with all of these, and we've taken some major heat on these, what I've said is we need to look at neighbors and their rights, and we need to look at the property rights, but we need to look at the city as a whole, and we need to ask ourselves, at a collector and an arterial, if we're not going to approve an apartment here, where would you propose that we put apartments? We need to have all of these uses in the city. We all, not everybody can afford to live in a single family home. I would just ask, if you can't do it here, where would you propose it be done? And so I guess I would just challenge that of my colleagues, and I would say, I get the concern, but this is 80 units. It's at a collector and an arterial. It's not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be. Ellis Road is going to carry thousands and thousands of cars. This will be a rounding error in the number of cars it will carry. And I think it's on the edge of the subdivision, by the way. It's not, I would just reject the assertion it's in the middle of a neighborhood. It's not in the middle of a neighborhood. And so, respectfully, I'm going to support this because I think he's made the concessions he needed to make, and it makes sense here. And if not here, I would ask where. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Other discussion on this item from any other counselors? Counselor
Mayor.
Jensen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I thought about while I was looking at this, driving over to the west side on Ellis, I thought a lot about my home, just off of Minnesota Avenue, just past the I-229, which we hear a lot of traffic from I-229, which is, what it is. And as you come off of Minnesota, there's some apartments there just to the south, and it then transfers or transitions into housing there on Lotta. And then there's some more apartments, probably about 80, right there on Lotta, right by Tomar Park. And these are my neighbors, not more than a block away like the gentleman spoke, and a little further away than 75 yards. I hear your guys' concerns, and when I think about people in apartments that are in my neighborhood, these are people that are a part of my neighborhood. It builds the character of the neighborhood, in my opinion, and enhances that neighborhood feel. My wife, when she moved to town, lived in an apartment on 85th and Louise. Right to the back of those apartments were great houses, very similar to the ones on Mary Beth. I don't know if Mr. Nielsen built those, but maybe he built those ones too. He has a track record of making properties very appealing to both homeowners and apartment individuals that are living in apartments. It is in his best interest to keep crime down in his apartments, and I think they've done a good job of doing that throughout history. I should have asked the question. But as we move forward, I think Councilor Erickson and Councilor Neitzer talked about if we aren't going to build it here, or if we're going to build office here, what would be the ideal, place to build apartments? Because as we continue to grow as a city, and we get big companies such as Amazon and all these others, this is one of the main places where people can buy land and put housing up. So that's why I'll be supporting this, and thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Other discussion amongst the council on this item? All right, I'm not hearing any other discussion. We got a motion and a second on the floor, so we will move to a vote then, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
No.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale.
No. All right, that item passes 6-2. We'll move on to item 44, please.
Item 44 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving Amendment Number 1 to the sponsorship agreement for the Midco Aquatic Center between the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and PJ Iowa, doing business as Papa John's. Sponsor is the mayor.
Good evening, Jackie.
Good evening, Jackie Nelson, Parks and Recreation Administrative Manager. This amendment would amend a current sponsorship agreement that we have at the Midco Aquatic Center with Papa John's. It's an ordinance because the agreement names 2 of the meeting rooms at the Midco Aquatic Center as the Papa John's party rooms. Essentially, the amendment is waiving the payment from June and December of this past year of 2020 and adding a 6th year to the sponsorship agreement, making it a 6-year agreement instead of a 5-year agreement, with the value staying the same. The reason for doing this was the facility was closed in March, did not reopen until June, but with limited capacity. Limited concessions are now just becoming available, so with that, that is why we're asking for the amendment, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thanks, Jackie. Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item tonight? Council, do you have any questions for Jackie on this item? All right, look for a motion on it.
Move to approve sale.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Jensen to approve. Any discussion here, council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote on it, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky? Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item 45.
Item 45 is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by changing a street name. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. Private applicants, Jarding Construction.
Good evening, Kurt.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Kurt Peppel, Assistant City Engineer. We have a street renaming. This is to set the date of hearing for Cardinal Cove Edition. It's a subdivision near 41st and Marion. You can see Lake Lorraine up and to the right. We are just northwest of 41st and Marion. The proposal is to change, it's a private street. It's West 38th Street Place, and they would like to change it to West Cardinal Cove Place. Again, it's Cardinal Cove Edition, so that's where they get the name. Applicants, Jarding Construction, and also along with the original developer, CAM Construction. A street renaming committee with Public Works, Fire Rescue, Planning and Development Services, Parks, and GIS has all reviewed and support the renaming. Engineering requests your support to move this to a second reading.
All right, thanks, Kurt. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item tonight? All right, councilors, do you have any questions for Kurt on this? All right, look for
Mr.
a
Mayor?
motion. Go ahead, Councilor.
For Kurt, are all the adjacent property owners, or are they required to sign off? Because there's a handful that live there now.
Yeah, there's a certain percentage, and the original developer and Jarding Construction met that requirement. And we have sent letters, typical practice, we'd sent letters to the owners, and sorry, I didn't move to the other map. There is a handful of owners out there, and we have sent them letters and also made contact with them. And our understanding is that Jarding had built those homes and they were, part of the conversation is that they were going to move forward with a name change of the street at some point.
Okay, very good. And I will just say that it's there's a sign when you drive by that says Cardinal Cove, and those homes are super, super cool. It's a really neat little development. Thanks.
All right, any other questions for Kurt on this? All right, I'd look for a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, January 12 on this item.
So moved, Erickson.
All right, motion by Erickson. We have
Second, Sale.
seconded by Counselor Sale.
I think Counselor Neitzer accidentally hung up instead of hitting mute, so if you miss a vote, that might be why we heard it beep.
Got it. All right, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion here? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert, Selberg,
You going?
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item, please.
Item 46 is a first reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota approving termination of the railroad switch track easement. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. Sponsor is the mayor.
Good evening, Dustin.
Evening, Dustin Powers with Planning and Development Services. We were approached by Sioux Steel, the property owners in downtown, as a result of a railroad switch track easement that was remaining on their property. The city property as well as the Gorley properties are adjacent properties that when the original deed was granted, we were also granted access to this easement across their property. And so all three parties need to enter into an agreement to terminate this. The city staff has reviewed the easement with the original easement being for rail spur activity. We don't see that being an activity that's going to occur in this area any longer. So the city staff does support entering into the termination agreement with both Sioux Steel and Gorley properties. Both Sioux Steel and Gorley properties have signed the agreement, so this ordinance would authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city. So we are looking at setting a second reading next week and then ask for approval then as well.
Thanks, Dustin. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item? All right, councilors, do you have any questions for Dustin tonight on this? Look for a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, January 12th.
So moved, Jensen.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Sale on this item. Any discussion here? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yep.
All right, that item passes 8-0. Item 47, please.
Item 47 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls approving the preliminary plan of Dove Ridge Addition, 13201-2020. The Planning Commission recommends approval 5-0. Private applicant is Willardson Lund Engineering Corporation. Eric Willardson.
The applicant here is Eric Willardson. The owner is Jeff Shetkowski. This is located north of East Rice Street and west of I-229. This is the preliminary subdivision plan that goes along with the rezoning that we heard earlier tonight for Dove Ridge Addition. The purpose of this preliminary plan is the applicant is looking at subdividing the 4.75 acres for 11 twin home lots. As we kind of indicated a little bit earlier, this is just the preliminary subdivision plan. There are several other steps with the subdivision ordinance that the applicant does have to take, the development engineering, construction plans, plating, and then they can actually construct. So there's several other chances for our city staff to be able to review this development and make sure that it meets all of our requirements of the subdivision ordinance. As you can see, they've kind of done preliminary drainage estimates for out there, and they are showing a detention pond in the way northeast corner. Obviously, that's just the preliminary location of it with additional engineering out here. And with when they get their grading plans, that may be moving to another area, whatever works best for this subdivision and also does meet our requirements of the subdivision ordinance. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jason. All right, anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight?
Eric Willardson again, Willardson Lund Engineering, as Jason indicated. These are our preliminary subdivision plans for the project. I guess in light of the concerns that were brought up earlier during the rezoning portion, I guess I will assure the mayor and council that we will adhere to all of the engineering design standards and subdivision requirements of the city for drainage, the streets, the grading, the development, and street lighting. And with that, I guess I would be happy to answer any questions or respond if need be.
Okay. we may have questions for you, so hang tight. Any other public input on this one tonight?
I'm David Zokaitis, and I noticed that about half of this piece of land is in the floodplain. And I'm wondering why there's being plans to develop property that's in the floodplain. That's my question.
Any other public input tonight on this item? Come on up, sir. Good evening.
My name is Kim Meester. I live at 9100 East Preston Lane. My wife and I have lived there for 40 years, ever since we came to Sioux Falls. I went through this process back up. My wife and I own and operate Archery Outfitters. We have 34 acres on the east side of this Dove Ridge development. Our property was a problem area for the city 18 years ago, so Steve Metley and Sean have seen the same vision that we had with Archery Outfitters. At that time, the city was pretty demanding in planning and zoning. I had to have everything from blueprints on the building, everything had to be laid out, even as far as trees placed by the building. We had to do test borings. This all had to be on a site plan before it would go to city council for approval. First part of December, there was planning and zoning meeting. The plans really haven't changed much from the neighborhood meeting last summer. Pretty vague, I think. Basically, they want the same thing as what everybody in the neighborhood wants. We want this done properly, and my understanding is when you approve this tonight, it's a done deal. I can't, there's no input from the neighborhood or anything once this is approved, is my understanding. There was a Zoom meeting. That's the first time it was brought up that there would be a privacy fence between Dove Ridge and Archery Outfitters. And after the zoning meeting, contractor approached us and said there would be a 6-foot privacy fence put in between our property. The detention pond in the northeast corner, I was told yesterday that's not going there. Now tonight I'm told it may stay there, may not stay there. This is a wetland area. Like I said before, I had to do test borings pretty much everywhere on our property, even on the hillside that was gravel before I would be allowed to build for any contaminants. And if any contaminants were unearthed, they had to be removed and hauled off the property. Even the city sewer project that went in 3 years ago, they had to do test borings to see what was in the ground for contaminants, and they did unearth a lot of contaminants. On the south half of his development, I don't think he's going to have any issues, but if he starts developing or excavating on the lower end, I think there's going to be some issues and problems. And basically what we want is just like the rest of the neighborhood on the west side. We're on the east side. Just want to make sure everything is done properly so there's no problems down the road. I think that's pretty much everything I have, so thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? Good evening, sir.
Matt Besplitz. I live at 1806 North Lewis. It would be just on the west side of the proposed development here. This has really impacted all the people on the west side. We've enjoyed for years privacy of having this glorious empty field that was pretty much a nature I don't know, nature reserve is just a bad way of saying it. It's just, great to be able to have deer walking through your backyard all the time and having the flock of turkeys to live out there, that's gonna be gone for all of us. And, it seems like a little thing, but, to us, it's kind of been, the way of life, and home. Second thing is it seems to me, and I don't know a good way to put this, is that the city's investing a lot of money in this. And every time we're talking about this, we're talking about these homes being sold for $200,000 or so a piece with some, low-income considerations, which is all fine and great. But we're really talking about half a home, half a yard, and the homes in this entire neighborhood with a full yard and a full garage and, the sheds and outbuildings and stuff are barely cracking that $200,000 range. The math just doesn't add up to me. This is something the city might want to consider. Plus, we're going to pack 18 to 20 families in a one-block space where there aren't that many families around an entire block in any part of that neighborhood. And this is all the way in the back corner of this neighborhood. It just doesn't seem like an appropriate fit. I'm all about it being developed. It's going to happen eventually. This just seems like a whole lot in a very small area where I think we could make better use of it. I'm just afraid that, we pack all these people back in this corner and it just gets forgotten about. And, that's kind of right in our backyard. And, when you got houses in the rest of the neighborhood that are in that $200,000 range, and now you're trying to sell a half a house for that same price, packed right next door to the next guy. That doesn't seem very appealing when you're in an entire neighborhood where there's nothing like that. Maybe it's just my view of it, and it's right in my backyard. I'd just like to see something different done with this. I think this could be used better and still get, some form of, accomplishing your goals for some low-income housing, but just not that densely in that spot. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Bespalitz, and I live at 1806 North Lewis. Matt's my husband. My concern is the drainage pond. I grew up in this neighborhood, and that whole lot, has been nothing but mosquito infested all the time. Who's going to take care of that? You're adding more water to an already bad situation. And we don't hear it. The developer says he's talked to people. Last time I talked to him was at our September meeting at the park. Nothing from him have we heard since then. I was told, you're a vocal one. I have to get really good in with you. Has not talked to us since then, not made any effort to talk to us. My other concern is the water drainage. And I bring it up every time I talk to Jason or anybody at the city. We have no storm sewers on that part of it. It all drains to the north. So when we get a heavy snow, a heavy rain, I have a creek that runs through my backyard. How cool is that in the city of Sioux Falls? I get we need affordable housing, totally understand it. But why can't we do something for the elderly? Or I work with people that have developmental disabilities. How about getting a nice little housing area for them? Because I know they need the houses. That would be better use for this land with city money. But you're gonna pass it either way, and I really just feel like I've wasted my time.
All right, thanks, Dawn. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Good evening.
Evening, Aaron Sayre. I live at 1904 North Lewis. Be the third lot in from the north. Lived there about 10 years now. And the retention pond would be my biggest concern. It is, like a couple of people already addressed, it's wet there year round. And not this last year because of our drought, but about every other year I've lived there, it's full of mosquitoes. I got 2 young children that like to play in the yard. We obviously have nice big lots, so kids play in the yard. My concern would be that pond. It's wet down there all the time on a normal season, so I feel like that pond's going to be sitting full with water a majority of the time. And now you're going to add all this hard surfaced area for the water to drain to this retention pond to hold more water. The next question would be is, when that pond fills, where does it go? Where does it drain after it fills? I don't know if you've seen the pictures, especially last year's when it flooded back there, where my property and the other 2 properties full of water in our backyards. That's just my biggest concern, is definitely that pond, holding more water for the mosquitoes, kids not being able to play. Is it dangerous? How deep is it? How big is it? Lewis, all the way on the north end of Lewis, they redid that. All the water that drains down Lewis has washed away the bottom of that hill already in the last couple of years since they've redone it. If you go down there, there's 4-foot ruts running all the way down to the field. So the drainage is the biggest concern, and I don't think that retention pond is probably the answer. I don't know what is, but that retention pond is definitely an issue. So, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Other comments or public input tonight on this? Come on up. Good evening.
Kenneth Underberg, 1900 North Lewis Avenue. I'm the 4th lot from the north. I'm worried along with the drainage, like he was saying. Also, when they do snow removal, it's a very skim process, and with the water retention, we do have a lot of ice and snow that builds up, and the roads get really slick. Like on North Lewis Avenue, that's actually more of an ice hill 90% of the time if it wasn't for a neighbor. Along with that, we're in that small area, they're having 11 twin homes, so that would be 22 new families. I'm worried about traffic out of there, crowding the area. You've got the Splash Park just 2 blocks to the west of it. So that's already a major increase in traffic. Now you're adding 22 families into that area. So you think 22 families, 44 cars. Now that's going to increase traffic. Are we going to do something? Are they going to have a more police presence in the area for security? Are they going to be doing lights on the street on Jessica and Rice Street because that's the main entrance and exit out of our neighborhood? I want to know, or I would like to know, like the plan for what's going on with the neighborhood for having 22 new families, 44 cars. That's just if it's the 2 parents doing it. It's not much for exiting out of this area, and that many more people in this area creates a very bad traffic incident, and that's also a more reason to worry about crime rates, since I do have a family and I have a big yard that I like to have my kids play in. I don't want to worry about more stuff happening in my yard than I've had in the past. And it's just different parts of that worrying, the kids playing. I don't want to have people running through my yard constantly that I don't know. Do I have to put up a fence in my own yard? Even though I have a massive hill in my yard and I can't really fence it, but it's just many different concerns with that, the housing and just, yeah. That's the main thing, my major concerns is how's it going to affect the neighborhood, how's it going to access the vehicles, the water flow, just everything along with that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Come on up, ma'am.
My name is Sherry Merkins. I live at 1912 North Lewis Avenue.
My property is the furthest to the north. I guess my main concern is the drainage. We already have a nightmare going down Lewis Avenue that the city has failed to take care of. And this is a photo of September of 19. We had a pretty good rain. This is my backyard looking out my back door. You can see a 3-foot fence is covered. The property he wants to build on is directly on the other side of the fence. At times there's 3 foot of water sitting back there on a good flood. It goes all the way to the Big Sioux River. He puts a retention pond back there and it floods my property. Who do I go after? Him for doing it or the city for allowing it? I mean, it's not a good situation back there to put families at risk. I have an 8-year-old grandson, a 1-year-old granddaughter that I've had the pleasure of letting play in my yard and not worrying about if they're gonna drown in a retention pond. I mean, mosquitoes are already horrible in our neighborhood during certain seasons, rainfalls. That's just gonna be a cesspool for mosquitoes to terrorize our neighborhood. It's not an ideal situation down there to have a house, a retention pond, anything. You know, he wants to build near a floodplain. You know, his construction adds more dirt further down the way. Next thing you know, my house is flooding faster because of work that was, you know, constructed. It's not a good situation. And I think the process as a whole, we had a city meeting up in the park, the whole neighborhood, probably 150 people came. He said, I'll keep you guys on top of things. If there's changes, I'll let you know. The city council said, if there's a meeting, I'll let you guys know. We received one letter during this whole process letting us know there was a planning meeting and zoning. Otherwise, it's been our job to investigate, you know, what's going on, everything, and that's not fair to us. You guys run the city. And processes aren't being followed that the city's supposed to do. How are you guys gonna make him follow a process? The whole situation needs to be looked into. It's not safe. I appreciate your time.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? Come on up, sir.
Jeff Milo, 2105 East Walnut, lives just south of the property. A lot of us come up here with grumps and gripes and we don't want this and we don't want that, but a lot of the main problem with this property has been that drainage issue. If you go south of this property, approximately, I'm gonna say 5 blocks, you've got Rice Street. Casey's on Rice Street. There are no storm drains from there all the way to here, nothing, and it all drains this way. Why can't somebody possibly do some talking to the people that own the land just to the north of this and put some storm drains in? The river's just north of this. Put a storm drain in, cures a lot of problems for a lot of people. And a lot of problems for the contractor too, I'm sure. So maybe that's a suggestion as to how to fix the problems here, some of them anyway. Mosquitoes and drainage and detention ponds. And instead of holding the water here, let's get it back to the river where it belongs. That's all I got to add, thank you.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Eric, did you speak on this item already?
I'm sorry, sir?
Did you speak already on this topic? Were you up here once?
Yes, I was.
Okay, we've got to give you a one shot per.
Understanding
If the
there's-
counselors have questions, they'll ask them of you. So we've got to finish public input, so you go ahead and take a seat and then let me finish running the item. We'll call you up if we need to. All right, is there any other public input on this topic? Come on up, sir.
I just want to clarify a couple things that were said here and were misrepresented. The retention pond is going to be moved out of the floodplain. That's already been presented to the city. It's been discussed. That picture that you saw of the floodplain, we're not building in that floodplain. As far as removing trees and talking to people and that type of thing, we're going to keep all the trees on the sides that we've told the neighbors that we're going to do. We've made several efforts with the meeting in September, the Zoom meeting in November. We notified people. In fact, Gary Van Riggermorton, a longtime resident of the area, personally went around, contacted most of these people tonight to answer any questions and to explain anything that we were doing as far as the drainage, at which they signed off on. So if you have any questions for me, I'd like to just clarify.
We may. If we do, we'll call you up.
All right.
Yep, thanks. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Good evening.
My name is Misty Roseheim. I live at 1915 East Pine Street. And I just want to say, I have not been contacted by Ben Riggermorter or talked to about what this gentleman just said. And I know all the neighbors around, excuse me, around me. Nobody's ever said that they've talked to him or have given consent, or maybe consent's not the right word, but have said, yes, I approve this. I think this is good. So I just wanted to reiterate, or not reiterate, but just, I've never been talked to. I didn't know anything about that, and I feel very confident that my neighbors around me especially would have told me that if they had talked to him or that conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Misty. All right, anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? All right, let's go to some questions. First off, are there any questions for either for Jason or for the applicants? Counselor Starr?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Willardson, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions. If you want to address the drainage for us and where that's going. The hardest part about this process is it's always, the next steps. The developer has to meet something, if they don't get approval from us, it doesn't make sense for them to spend, I'm sure you're charging them for the engineering process that you're doing for them as well. So we stage this so that they have that opportunity, that they know that it's something that we want to move forward with, but the drainage will be addressed. So if you could address where you think how the drainage would best work in the next steps as part of if we approve this tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Starr. I don't know if there's another picture. Obviously, the lots are to the north, are very much larger. There is a 100-year floodplain line that crosses through the property. We will not be building below the floodplain. It's simply not allowed under ordinance. So the detention pond, I'm sure Jeff would be more than happy not to pay to construct that pond, but that pond is required by design standards. So we have no choice but to manage and treat the stormwater runoff from this project. And the detention pond will move, already has been moved, up to, I'll say, the south corner of lot 6, southwest corner. It'll be located out of the floodplain. Again, those plans will be developed with the engineering development plans and will be addressed. And again, all the development for this project has to meet engineering design standards and subdivision ordinance, and it will. Understand there may be some drainage issues. There's drainage issues all over this city. We try and address them. This project will address the drainage issues related to this site. So with that, I guess I would answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I guess
Certainly moving forward with it, but
I don't know how to assure the neighborhood that it's going to be taken care of. And I think the way we do that is that the design standards that we have in place will address their concerns. But you also said, there's going to be some drainage issues. This lot has been, as much of the testimony said, is very wet, and a lot of the neighborhood drains through this property, and being able to do that. I understand their concern. I mean, it just, you know, it's unfortunately a trust process at this point.
And when they say this area is very wet, it actually drains very well. There's a lot of grade on this property. It drains to the river. And it will continue to. Now, a lot of the neighborhood drainage drains this direction and comes through and drains down that portion of Chicago Avenue. And that needs to continue to be a drainage way for the surrounding area. It's not our drainage area. You know, we're not going to use it. Our property drains straight to the north. But
So are you saying that you wouldn't think that we'd release the easement at this point then? That wouldn't be the advisable procedure moving forward?
In my opinion, I think it'll remain a drainage easement and not a public right of way, but it'll be for drainage. It's not going to be for a street, but it is needed for drainage.
Thank you.
Right, other questions for Eric while we have him here? Counselor Erickson, go ahead.
I don't know if this is for you, Eric, or whomever. One of the, I think, worst issues as a homeowner is water. It is a helpless situation when you have water creeping up to your property and can't do a darn thing about it. And many of us dealt with that with the heavy water back in 2019. So my question, I hear the concerns of the neighbors. The picture that you showed looked exactly like one of my properties that backs up to the Big Sioux as well. And it's not a fun situation. My question to you is, one, I know you through this process. I don't know you outside of here. And so I hope that you are listening to the neighbors and the concerns of water. I think that is the main issue in this. They know, hey, it's been nice that there's been deer and turkeys going through here, but they know it's not going to stay green space. If they wanted a green space, they'd unfortunately have to buy it. So they know it's going to eventually be developed. I don't think that's the issue here. It's just the issue of once that development goes in and there's more hard surface and more street, what's going to happen to the water? And it's scary. I get it. And people don't always know that until they live it, but it's hard saying, hey, let's shake on it and move forward and know that you'll take care of it. And so, you know, I'm glad we're having this conversation today. I'm glad the neighbors are speaking because if there's continued to be drainage issues, I want you to come back, and you've got to come back in this venue to speak. But I'm certain that those drainage standards are going to help your neighborhood. That's what it's designed to continue to drain down as there's that development on there. Can you tell me who's going to own the drainage pond and maintain it? That was also a concern from many of the neighbors, is that, and maybe this is a question from somebody with the city, I don't know if this is going to be dedicated back to the city and the city has to maintain it to ensure that it's cleaned out of soot, because that happens, to ensure that's still going to drain appropriately.
Sure, and thanks, Commissioner. I guess to answer that, we have been in conversations. We had a meeting last week with the city staff, and there's a couple options for the area that's going to be to the north or in the floodplain. One of them would be a lease type thing to a nonprofit for some type of community use for that land. And the other option we talked about was, yes, we would turn it over to the city and the city would maintain the pond, and they've agreed to. They have done this in similar situations. I guess I would say too, fortunately, or unfortunately, but all of the water from this development drains directly to the north, and none of it will affect the outlying residents or the existing properties at all. All their water drains through this, so.
Right, which I understand unless it's blocked up. I mean, you know, that's, you know, if it can't flow out fast enough, then it backs up as, that's rare times, but I know that area does have some drainage issues. And so I just want you, and as well as the rest of the city staff, to really make sure that this is a priority, because we have a great opportunity for this investment in these homes to allow some great affordable homes. But while we're doing that, let's make sure that we're also addressing the drainage and ensuring that this can be a great neighborhood and developed. So, thank you.
Planning staff has communicated to us in no uncertain terms, we will not be developing in the floodplain, and we understand that.
Yes, thank you.
All right, other questions for Eric while we have him up here?
Thank you.
All right, hearing none, thanks, Eric. All right, I just step out to use the little boys' room, but we don't have a motion on the floor, do we? Okay. Other questions then for our staff? Public input's passed, sir. Sorry. All right, then let's move into a motion then, and we can move into discussion.
Move approval, Sale.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Jensen. All right, discussion amongst the council on this. Councilor Sale, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To some of the neighbors that are here today, I appreciate your concerns. I've been in that area been up in that area many, many times over the past 40 years and understand that area. And I understand there's water issues, but I do know this, that our staff, between Shelley and Jason and the people that deal with drainage, are going to keep up to the standards that we have set throughout the years. We have adopted the international building codes. We have all the standards in place. If they fail to do that, their jobs are in jeopardy. So they're not going to allow any developments to go in that don't meet the standards that we've adopted today. And I know what it's like to have your backyard flooded. I know what it's like to not have mosquitoes all through your yard. And so I think that this is a step forward for that neighborhood, and certainly it is for the housing needs that we have. And so I look forward to this completion of this project, and I have faith in our city staff that they're going to make it happen for you in a safe way. Might not be the way you envision it today, but it will be done in the correct way. So that's why I'm going to vote for this.
All right, thank you. Other discussion amongst the council on this one? All right, I'm not hearing any other discussion. So we will take a vote then on this motion to approve this item.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes. Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
All right, that item passes 8-0. Item 48, please.
Item 48 is a resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Annexation 01-2818-2020, Public Safety Edition. Sponsors the mayor.
Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening. Jeffrey Schmidt, representing Planning and Development Services. This is a petitioned annexation by the City of Sioux Falls. It's up in the northeast part of town. It's 122 acres, and it's contiguous to the City of Sioux Falls.
All right. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item? Councilors, do you have any questions for Jeff on this? All right, look for a motion.
So moved, Jensen.
Second, Sale.
Motion by Jensen, seconded by Councilor Brecky, I think was jumped in there. Any discussion, council, on this then? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item 49, please.
Item 49 is a resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Annexation 01-3594-2020, Northeast 1/4 Sesher Edition. Private applicants, Aaron Norman.
This is in the northwest part of town. This is a petitioned annexation. It's contiguous. We've waited at least 14 years for this property to come in. It's very good to see. It's 155 acres, and we're more than happy to see it come forward.
All right, great. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight? Council, do you have any questions for Jeff on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Neitzer, go ahead.
This is a big deal because it eliminates a flagpole that's been hanging out there for a long time and gets contiguous territory going out to George McGovern Middle School. So great, thanks.
Bet. Any other questions for Jeff? All right, let's look for a motion on this one then.
Move to approve. Brecky.
Second, Sale.
Second.
All right, motion by Brecky, seconded by Counselor Sale on that one. Any other discussion here, Council? Hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson, Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Move to item 50, please.
Item 50 is a resolution removing uncollectible delinquent accounts from the record. Sponsors the mayor.
Good evening, Sean.
Good evening, Council. Sean Pritchett, Director of Finance. Annually, we come before you requesting to write off those items that we believe will no longer be collectible for the city. The council takes action on items over $5,000. And so before you, there are 7 items here that we're bringing forward to have you write off as part of our end of year closing process. I will walk you through those real quickly here, just to make sure you don't have any questions about those. The first one is related to the sanitary landfill. It was a business that went out of, it was a garbage hauler that went out of business. It covered about a 4-month period in 2019 that was taken to bad debt at the end of 2019, and we're looking to write off entirely here at the end of 2020. The second 2 items are related to housing. They are marked confidential. I'll address that. That's been a practice that we have done for quite some time, dates back at least 25 years. Because it is an assistance program. There's also some HUD requirements in terms of privacy, not associating your names along with financial information, and whether this meets that criteria of privacy or not, we've taken a conservative approach as a city over the long term. But what I can tell you is they both relate to individuals. They were both related to low-income assistance that had been provided by the housing department. The first one was related to a housing rehab loan that was made, and they usually take a second on the house for that. That house was short sold for a loss. It was about, we did recover about $7,300, and the $12,500 is the amount that's remaining and left. The second one is very similar. It was down payment assistance, and also it was a rehab loan for the home. That was a sheriff's sale and foreclosure, and they're able to recover the remainder of that unpaid at $85.71. The next item that is before you, I will ask for an amendment here as part of your approval to modify the department. Shouldn't be water, it should be Parks and Recreation. This amount for $9,800 relates to a person who ran into, their vehicle ran into various portions of parks assets, a tree, watering systems, and plumbing. And there's court-ordered restitution. It has ceased to be collected, or at least for some time, so we deem it uncollectible. We can still receive that restitution should he or this person decide to pay in the future. The next 2, the first one again, for Dean Foods, I would ask for a correction for the being from the department from water to lights and distribution, or excuse me, power and distribution. Both that and the second one, which relates to public utilities, relates to a bankruptcy of a local food processing firm. This was slightly over about a month of public utilities and electricity bills that they had at the time. And then the last one, similarly, was public utilities. It was about 2 months worth of those bills. It relates to a former nursing home management operator in the community that no longer is here, nor do we have any communication with and deem that item to be uncollectible as well. I'm happy to answer any questions you have in regard to this. I know Dan Friedbauer with Public Utility Billing and Donnie Kuiper with the landfill are here to answer any questions as well.
All right, thanks, Sean. Anyone from the public here to speak on this topic? All right, Council, you have any questions on this? Councilor Erickson?
I just have one question, and this is only because I never thought I would hear about garbage haulers being delinquent when this was my first term in my first year, maybe, Councilor Kylie as well, when we dealt with several delinquent garbage haulers that we were not collecting on in an appropriate, timely manner. My question is if this hauler starts up business again or starts under a different DBA, can it be something that we can withhold his license and say, hey, you can't be, if you go from ABC, you can't go to 1, 2, 3 because we're going to make you settle up your debt. Is that an option that we can do to hold people accountable?
On the first question, I can address this, and if there's further, probably Donnie can address it as well. But I believe after like a 60-day or 90-day delinquency, once they hit 60 days, they are cut off from having access to the landfill for their use until they become current. As opposed to a startup of a new business under a different corporate name, I guess I'd have to defer to legal to see what our options would be.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just give an example. When I worked for the Department of Revenue, we'd have people that would be so far behind, and then they'd start it up under the wife's name because they wanted to start their auto mechanic company or their garbage hauler, whatever it is. And so it's just a frustrating process to skirt your abilities to pay, and the taxpayer pays at the end. So I just didn't know how far and deep we go back into holding folks accountable. And I know this doesn't happen as often, but often enough. Thanks.
Other questions for city staff on this item? All right, look for a motion on it.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion by Brecky, seconded by Jensen to approve. Councilor Neitzer.
Yes, I would move to amend the resolution to make the following corrections. Deleting the Department Water and replacing with Department Parks and Recreation for customer 2250 with an amount of $9,821.31, and deleting the Department Water and replacing with Department Power and Distribution for customer 5024980 with an amount of $34,526.26.
Second, Erickson.
All right, motion by Neitzer, seconded by Erickson on that amendment. Any discussion on that amendment? All right, let's take a vote on that one, please.
On the amendment, Councilmember Starr? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson? Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
All right, the amendment passes, so we're back to the main motion as amended. Is there any other amendments to make here? All right, hearing none. Any other discussion? Let's take a vote on this one then.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson? Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
All right, that item passes 8-0. Item 51, please.
Item 51 is a resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to certain citizen boards, that being Civil Service Board, Elena Holmstrom.
All right, can I get a motion to approve Elena to our Civil Service Board, please?
I so move.
Second.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Jensen on that. Any discussion here? Hearing none, let's take a vote on that, please.
Councilmember Starr? Yes. Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson? Jensen?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Item 52 is notice of transfer of appropriations on the memorandum dated December 21st, 2020.
All right, councilors, any new business? All right, next up is our public input. General public input will last no more than 3 minutes per person. And during general public input, the public is welcome to speak on any topic that did not appear earlier on in the regular agenda. At this time, I'd like to invite anyone forward for general public input. Good evening, gentlemen.
Greetings. I'm David Zokaitis, and I have Mike helping me flip pages today. Oh, there we go. And I'm here to talk about cannabis in Sioux Falls. All right, now, there's some common myths concerning marijuana or cannabis, and people think that it's a common drug. Turns out it's not even number 5 on my list of common drugs. There they are: sugar, caffeine, alcohol, nicotine. Marijuana is not even on there. Not that common. Now, people think about drugs, but they forget to think about sugar as a drug. And I found this nice scientific reference that said, oh yeah, sugar's a drug, and it does dopamine kind of things to your brain, and there's the reference if you want to track it down. But Sugar's a drug. Now, we're supposed to believe that cannabis is this terrible, dangerous monster. And there's some nonsense that we heard about in the 1930s from a nasty guy called Harry J. Anslinger. But none of that rhetoric is the truth. It turns out that alcohol is more dangerous than cannabis, and that cannabis is relatively benign. All right, now, so here's some old propaganda. A poster that I have, a poster that's in a friend's house, and you can see the kind of nonsense people used to say about it, maybe still do. In reality, there are some positive benefits to cannabis. It's a lot better for pain relief than opiates, for example, and it has been used to treat PTSD and epilepsy, and even cure chemotherapy problems like nausea. Actually, it's pretty good stuff. I've never tried it, but that's what the science says about it. Now, speaking of local regulations, you should look at California and not do what they've done. Because, you know, if cannabis is a little safer than alcohol, it should be treated that way with regard to regulations. And instead, California's gone and made it a lot more trouble. So you've got black market problems continuing in California, and I just don't think that we should do it that way here. Now, I've tried to look at the stance of the current administration concerning cannabis, and I found this tweet here. It looks like he's not into it, doesn't like marijuana, according to this. And I found a little quote on, I think it's Kelloland.com, and he's thinking about excluding dispensaries from Sioux Falls. If that's not currently the case, I'd like to know about it, but apparently that's the current stance. I better go quick. My recommendation is to allow for local dispensaries, again, because the drug is safer than alcohol. We should listen to our voters. And I'd like to thank some people that helped me out. Background information. There they are. There's my people that helped. And of course, you should try to enjoy winter because it's beautiful. And good night.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public input tonight? Mike, come on up.
So you're Mike Zerts of Sioux Falls. I got thinking, something happened this weekend over the snow removal, and I got me thinking. My brother had an issue with his cars. He has a small business on the west side of Sioux Falls. He got 7 cars towed. He had moved them off the street before the plows come through. Then because his landlord wanted to plow his parking lot, he put them back on the street after the plows come through. And then the city ticketed his cars. I guess they came through a second time. He wasn't aware of it, and I guess he probably got ticketed Friday afternoon, sometime after he went home. So he gets a shock Monday morning. But something got thinking, and I don't know, something American. You can kind of create more awareness because I notice we got a lot of cars that get after the plows come through. They just go around. What kind of decisions go in? Do ticketing one set of cars and not maybe doing another set of cars. So I don't know if they're abandoned or not. So I thought it's got me thinking: do we have to go back into the ordinances and maybe clean up some language and maybe abandon cars or something? Maybe if it's becoming more of a problem, and I know you're pretty good at it of keeping people aware. Do we have to kind of go back to the ordinances and maybe make people aware of get the cars off the street sooner, or maybe if we know a snowstorm's coming 2 or 3 days, maybe we should start advertising to get people to move off the street, maybe ticket them a little bit sooner, or like a 2-day warning or something. But it's just something I got thinking that my brother went through over the weekend. He 7 cars, that's a lot of money. But it's just something maybe we should look into if it's becoming more a problem with people just not moving cars, because he didn't intend for that to happen. He might have just dropped the ball the second time, not knowing the plows were coming the second time. So some people intended to leave them on the street for us. I mean, I know for my dad and I, we've been in the repair business for a long time, and people just, every time there's a snow removal coming, snowstorm coming, it seems like we always get stuck with a bunch of cars. People just, For some reason, they just, we gotta get out the car off of the road, they drop them off in a parking lot, then we get stuck with a bunch of abandoned cars. So maybe it's something we gotta look into in the future, just so that doesn't happen again. It can't be easy for you to deal with that all the time. You probably get a lot of complaints, I suppose, too, so just something I thought of. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All right, anyone else for public input tonight? All right, seeing none, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Done.
All right, motion to adjourn by Jensen, seconded by Erickson. All those in favor say yes. All those opposed?
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.